Brilliant. Thank you, Emily, for the really nice introduction. And hello, everyone. My name is Mareva. I am a volunteer organizer with the Vegan Society and I cover the London area. So I work with a team of other volunteers and together we cover a lot of outreach events that includes like in-person events like stalls at university, colleges, also with councils. But we also do a lot of online campaigning that includes reaching out to restaurants and pubs and cafes, asking them if they can have some more vegan options on their menu, and also reaching out to our respective MPs to try and see how together we can implement more vegan options in public services. So this talk specifically is happening in November because it marks the World Vegan Month, which is perhaps a little bit less known. I think lots of you will have heard of Veganuary, but this is actually the first vegan month that has been invented. So this is a bit like the OG. In terms of agenda, I'll first be introducing the Vegan Society and then exploring the World Vegan Month and what it means and how we celebrate it. And then we'll look into defining veganism because I know a lot of people still have questions about exactly what it means, what you eat, what you don't eat, and lots of other different practices that go into it. And then to tie in with the sustainability series, we'll look into the relationship between veganism and the environment, specifically focusing on the leather industry and animal products in our alimentation. And we'll be looking at some easy swaps that you all can look into implementing into your daily life and other swaps that we can think of maybe. And we'll finish this nicely by looking into some common myths associated with veganism because a lot of people have preconceived ideas about it. And we'll finish with a little Q&A. I just wanted to specify that I've included a few discussion points throughout the presentation for you all to be able to get involved and say whatever comes to your mind. And I just really wanted to highlight that this is a very, like, I don't know, I want this to be a safe space. There's no right or wrong thing to say. It's just about communicating and maybe sharing our views because everyone's going to think about different things when thinking about the same overarching topic, for example, veganism. So I think it will be really interesting to be able to share and see how we all feel about certain topics. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm really excited to be able to share some more information about the Vegan Society. So maybe some of you will have seen this logo places before. The Vegan Society is a registered educational charity, which is based in the UK but covers also international areas. It was founded in 1944, so this year is 2024, so it marks its 80th anniversary. And it was actually founded in November of 1944, so it's exactly 80 years. And it was founded by a group of non-dairy vegetarian who all had similar beliefs that they didn't want to eat meat, obviously. They also felt like they had some ethical concerns about dairy, and they wanted to come up with a word and a definition to be able to better describe how those ethical concerns manifested into their daily lives. So they looked into a number of words, and I'm really, really happy that they came up with vegan because in the list of other words were vegan or benevore, and I am so, so happy I don't have to say I'm a benevore to people because that just sounds a bit weird. So yeah, they came up with the word vegan. So veganism actually has been around for quite a while. And the goal of the Vegan Society is to provide information and guidance on various aspects of veganism for new and potential vegans, caterers, healthcare professionals, educators, and the media. So the Vegan Society has a full-time team who are based in Birmingham and volunteers like myself who are based scattered across the UK, and we all are based in different cities and do more local actions there. And the team in the Birmingham office prepare campaigns And we also have a dietitian, for example, who prepares recipes and advice related to veganism. So the definition of veganism, as the Vegan Society intends it, is veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purposes, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefits of animals, humans, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. So this is a very long definition, which is very wordy. So I will have a little bit more of a look into what it actually means practically. But I think this is the most comprehensive, definition you can potentially ever see about veganism. So yeah, I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you. So the World Vegan Month, as I said, the Vegan Society was founded in November 1944. So, to mark the 50th anniversary of the Vegan Society, they created the World Vegan Day, which was held on the 1st of November in 1994. And this was later extended to become the World Vegan Week, and as we know it today, the World Vegan Month. For the Vegan Society, that involves a variety of campaigns across the country and, in general, an uptick in terms of outreach events. And what we do is one of our busiest months, along with Veganuary, which a lot of people will have heard of. So, yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the first discussion point, and before I go into a little bit more definition of what being vegan means, I really wanted to hear what everyone thinks about when they think about veganism. It can be anything, yeah, anything that comes to mind. Feel free to share.
I think for me, when I first like thought of veganism, I kind of just thought of it within a diet sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of also unfortunately hear like negative things about vegans and about
Yeah.
them being very kind of prescriptive and like almost, I guess, preachy towards other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting. I think that's something that I hear a lot in my day-to-day life, to be honest. People just getting a little bit scared when I say I'm vegan, when clearly there's nothing to be scared of. But yeah, thank you for sharing this. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share?
I think, sorry. Um, Something that I usually think about is like, I guess like concerns about like protein, yeah,
Hmm.
getting enough protein and like issues like protein deficiency and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for talking about this. Yeah, I think that's also one of the first questions that people who are vegan get. Unfortunately, there's still a bit of information online that says that, to get protein, you have to eat beef, you have to eat chicken, you have to eat cottage cheese, or I don't know. And actually, the Vegan Society has some really good resources online about plant proteins and where you can get them from if that is something that you're interested in. But I totally understand where you're coming from with this because I think we don't really get taught at school where protein really comes from and what are different sources of protein besides chicken. So yeah, I totally get what a lot of people think this. Brilliant. Thank you for the two people who brought some discussion to this. I think there will be plenty more discussion points. And yeah, if you don't have anything to say, it's also okay not to say anything. I'm the same sometimes in meetings. I'm just like, I don't really know. So that's brilliant. I'm ready to move on if no one else has anything. Cool. So as we hinted earlier, veganism is much more than diet, even though that's probably the part of veganism that people think of first. There's actually a lot more that goes into it. It's a global philosophy that you don't want to use animals in any way, and that involves looking when you're buying toiletries or household products, really looking to see if they have been tested on animals, because sadly enough, still a lot of them are being tested on animals and it is completely avoidable. And there's so many great products now that aren't being tested on animals. So they have the cruelty-free logo, which is the leaping bunny one at the bottom, but also looking to see that they are vegan, that they don't use any animal products in their composition. So I put the little logo in the slide here. You can look out. Sometimes it's the actual like leaping bunny on products, but it's usually quite easy to identify. There's also clothes. So as you probably know, a lot of clothes and jumpers and stuff are made of wool or fur or even silk. So vegans avoid that as much as possible. And then there's leather, which is present in shoes, bags, furniture, in the inside of cars. It is pretty much everywhere, and it's really difficult to avoid in a day-to-day life, I would say, because a lot of seats and like or even in the gym, a lot of equipment is made of leather. So it is really difficult to avoid. But I think in terms of personal items, it is becoming a lot more common to see vegan leather being used for shoes and bags, and that is something that is pretty cool to be able to buy instead of buying leather. And then finally, we also try to avoid taking part in or like encouraging or financing any animal cruelty. So that includes not going to zoos or aquariums or circuses that still use animals for some of them. So there are a lot of elements to it around just the diet. Next slide, please. Thank you. Um, so yeah, as I said, the diet is probably what springs to mind first. And the thing that I really wanted to highlight here is that a vegan diet can be anything you want it to be. There are very few restrictions nowadays. I've put a lot of photos of ice creams at the bottom because I'm a big ice cream person, and there are so many different alternatives now. And it's the same with savory food, like you get a lot of meat alternatives. I think most people now get oat milk for their coffees or soya milk. There are lots of great options out there. And it can really be anything you want it to be. It can be as healthy as you want it to be. If you want to have salads for every meal as a vegan, you definitely can do that. But a lot of vegans also really like junk food, and there are so many great options for that. So I would say it's as per every single diet, it is what you want it to be and what you make it to be. It can be really healthy, but it's not granted. It's really based on your personal preferences. And I think now we're really lucky because I don't know, 50 years ago, it really wasn't like that. There wasn't so many great products to choose from. But now most supermarkets and brands will have tons of vegan alternatives, which is really great to see. So there's a lot of variety to explore, even for non-vegans who are just looking to spice things up and try something different. I think there are a lot of great products to choose from and to try out just for fun. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the diet. Also, I'm not a dietitian, so I don't really have any specific advice about it. Oh, I think this can be a really fun one. If you have ever tried any vegan alternatives from the shops, even just plant milk or any vegan meats or vegan cookies, anything really, feel free to share what you've thought of them, whether it's positive or negative, honestly. And if you think of any naturally vegan dishes that you have quite often or that are really present in your culture, feel free also to share. I think it's just a nice point to talk about the food that we like, basically. That also happens to be vegan.
I
I'm
know for
probably
me
the sorry.
personally. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just really the wrong person to ask because I've been vegan for like 21 years.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
that's probably not interacting very much, but like all the food, but cheese needs work. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so interesting to see. Being vegan 20 years ago must have been quite different. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I did veganuary this year. For me, it wasn't too much of like a transition because I'm already vegetarian, but like it kind of made me realize how many things that I consume have like dairy in that you wouldn't like immediately think of, which is like quite interesting. And also I tried to kind of do it to like towards like making sure to like not purchase products that use animal testing and things like that, because again, as you mentioned, there's like a lot of products like cleaning products, cosmetic products, all those kind of things that use animal cruelty, which is a shame. But yeah.
True. Yeah. It's always that for products that include milk, often it's that 0.1% milk powder at the end that really is annoying. Yeah, but as you said, for toiletries, I think it's becoming quite easy now with the logos, and most brands are quite transparent about it, which is nice. But it's still a bit annoying having to look through everything.
I'm not vegan, but I do avoid dairy and eggs for like health reasons because I do have a very, very slight mild dairy and egg allergies.
Okay.
And I get like rashes sometimes whenever I consume dairy or eggs. So it's not that I'm vegan, but when I was younger and was looking for like dairy-free products, they were very scarce and sort of not on the market as much. But now, I'm 21 years old and they're everywhere. There's so many like dairy-free, plant-based products, and it's just so much more accessible, which is really nice. And I wanted to say, like, there are many products that are like hidden vegan, so they're not actually vegan, but they don't contain any animal products, like Oreos, for example. They don't
Yeah.
have any dairy or I mean, animal products, which is really good.
Yeah, it's true. I'm so happy that Oreos are vegan. I loved them so much as a kid. It would have broken my heart to have to give them up. But yeah, you're right. I think also from a vegan point of view, in UK it's really good that all the allergens are in bold because it also really helps. For example, me, if they say a product is vegetarian, then I just need to look at the words in bold and see if like there's any milk or eggs in the product. So yeah, but I can imagine being allergic to this is not easy because a lot of vegan products will also say like may contain traces of, which as a vegan I personally don't mind, but I guess if you're really allergic, that's probably a big struggle still. But yeah, thanks for sharing this. It's really interesting.
I'm not very allergic, so I do still have dairy and
Mm.
egg products, but it's just like
Oh, right.
sometimes I do avoid it.
Yeah, fair.
And it's just so much easier when things in the market are vegan.
True. Nice. Thank you, everyone. Cool. Uh, Next slide, please. Thank you. So now we're going to look into the environmental benefits of a vegan diet, or I guess the environmental impacts of a non-plant-based lifestyle. So some core environmental factors that we're going to consider in this presentation are water use, and by extension, I guess we're going to look a little bit at water pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, land use, which leads to deforestation, and by extension, loss of biodiversity. So, yeah, we're going to look into those three topics specifically and have a little bit more of a deep dive about them. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with water use. So plant-based eating is in general uses a lot less water than a meat-heavy diet. So I've put some numbers on the left-hand side. You can see for 1 kilogram of beef, to produce this, you have to use up 15,500 liters of water, which is a difficult, I don't know why I find it difficult to say, but it's quite a lot of water and a little bit less, but still pretty high. We have 4,325 liters for 1 kilogram of chicken. And we can see that once we start going to more plant-based foods, we have a kilogram of potatoes, which is only 287 liters, and a kilogram of tofu, which I guess a lot of vegan could use to substitute chicken or beef, is only 2,520 litres, which is a little bit more than half of the chicken. So I've also got some, I think fun is wrong, interesting facts about water use and plant-based eating. But I recently came across some stats which I thought were quite funny. Interesting. So you can actually save more water by not eating one beef burger, assuming a beef burger is about 200 grams, than you would by not showering for 47 days. Which I do not recommend not showering for 47 days, by the way. But yeah, so it's pretty telling because people often think, oh, I need to have shorter showers to like help the environment and use less water. But actually, just by substituting maybe a beef burger with a vegan burger, you could already make a big difference, and you wouldn't even need to shorten your showers. Which I know going into winter we all like a nice hot shower. And animals raised for food produce more than 10 times as much waste as the entire human population does. And a lot of that waste actually contains a lot of toxic products, which tend to run off directly into waterways and therefore pollute the water. So it's all, I don't know what I say, it's like a full circle basically. So yeah, animal products in general use up a lot of water, and the production of animal products can also contribute to polluting the waterways. Uh, so yeah, that's all I had to say about water. Thank you. So now we're going to look at greenhouse gas emissions, and it's a pretty simple one. There are lots of stats on the internet. There is so much about this topic because the difference is pretty staggering. A vegan diet essentially uses less than half of the carbon emissions than high meat diet does. And even for people who don't eat a lot of meat, every single bit of meat basically uses up so much, or like the production of every single item of meat requires the production of so much CO2 that it is still a massive difference. And I have linked some sources at the end, which I'm sure Emily will be able to share the slides with you, so you can all have a look if you are interested. But I personally find it really interesting because the difference is actually so much more than you would first think. And I know I am biased. I know I'm really convinced that this is, veganism is a solution when it comes to all the environmental concerns that we have, but I think the data just speaks for itself and the numbers don't really lie. So yeah, I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you. So this is about land use, and this is from a really cool website which is called Our World in Data, and they have so many graphs which are generally so interesting and so well made. So here we can look at the land use for different kinds of diets, and we can really see which ones use up more land and which ones use up very little land. And I find it particularly interesting to see how much of that land is due especially to meat, and actually how already adopting a vegetarian diet, for example, can make a big difference. Because as what is your name? Sarah? Sarah, right? As you said earlier, I think vegan cheeses can sometimes put some people off because a lot of them are quite different to regular cheese. If I can put it that way. So I think a lot of people often say, "Oh, I could never go vegan because I love cheese too much." And I think honestly, if you can't go vegan, maybe you could try doing eating more vegetarian food or even going vegetarian fast. I think a lot of people need to take it progressively, and it's not about going vegan from a day to another. And I know that's completely unrealistic for a lot of us, but maybe trying some simple swaps and trying to see what you can realistically see yourself doing. And it's not about being perfect and doing everything, it's about doing some small things and implementing some small changes, because we can see with this graph, they can have a huge difference. So as we can see here, a lot of the land use is due to pasture, which is basically like cows grazing. They use up a lot of land, And that is not necessarily, I guess, something that we think about a lot. But in some countries, for example, there isn't that much land available, and a lot of the farmland is already being eaten up by construction and the fact that we need to house more and more people. And it can also destruct some natural habitat for some species if you have farmland instead of woodland, for example. So it's actually really bad in terms of biodiversity for some species that had their like natural habitat that was destroyed by farmland. But also when we think about the population crisis that we're having at the moment and the fact that they need to build homes, in some countries, I think having less farmland could allow us to preserve this biodiversity that we have while being able to house everyone. And it's also a problem in terms of sorry, I got an email. Um, Sorry, I lost the plot a little bit. I got an email, I got distracted. I think that's all I had to say, actually. Cool. And I've spoken a lot about the meat and dairy industry, but what I really wanted to highlight here is that there are lots of other industries associated with the meat industry and like animals in general that are also quite harmful to the environment that people don't necessarily think about. So I wanted to talk a little bit about leather. So what I hear a lot is that leather is just a byproduct of the meat industry. And I think this is really convenient to think about because then you don't really feel guilty when you're buying like a handbag made of leather because you think, well, the skin is already there basically. You might as well use it up. But actually, that's not really true. While some of the leather is obtained this way, there's actually lots of dedicated livestock farming for leather specifically because there's a high demand for that product. So a lot of animals are often raised primarily for their hides and not their meats. And that is more true in specific regions, and it varies a lot based on the market and where you live. But in some countries, there are lots of livestock farming just for leather. And there is a really high market demand because leather is in high demand for products like shoes, bags, and furniture, as we saw earlier. So it drives its own independent production because when you think about all the even just the handbag industry, there are so many fancy handbags and it's probably generating so much money. So it really makes sense that it's its own industry as a whole, completely separate from the meat industry, even though they do interact and potentially benefit from one another. So avoiding leather could also be something that people do. And I know there are some concerns about some vegan leathers, especially plastic derived ones, which are also really polluting and really difficult to make. But I think now there are more and more and more sustainable alternatives to that that are being developed. And it's really interesting to look into. And what I personally do in terms of mitigating my like sustainability impact when I buy fake leather, but essentially is I buy it secondhand. And I know there's no perfect solution, but I think in terms of the environment, this is probably a lot better than buying a leather handbag. And there are also lots of environmental hazards associated with leather because tanneries, so where the leather is made, essentially release harmful pollutants like chromium 4, which I looked it up and it is carcinogenic. So we don't like that. And leather production also contributes to deforestation through the fact that you have to have that cattle grazing and you just need like farmland for that. And leather farming significantly increases greenhouse gas emissions, including methane and CO2. So all in all, leather is also a part of the problem essentially when it comes to all those factors that we looked at earlier, water use, land use, and greenhouse gas emission. It also contributes to increasing those values. I'm ready for the next slide. Okay. This one is really open. It can be anything to do with food, but I'm also curious to hear like what other people are doing in terms of reducing their environmental impact. Even I don't know if it's just recycling or something like that. I'm really interested to hear that and what actions everyone is taking and what everyone thinks about when they think about reducing their environmental impact.
I think for me, you kind of just touched on it a second ago, but a big thing that I've been trying to do is like buy most of my clothing, if not all my clothing, secondhand, because obviously the fashion industry, like whether it's related to things like leather or in whole, it's another big like water use, greenhouse gas emissions. So I've been trying to be mindful of that. And also there's so many clothes that already exist in the world. And I found so many like nice things secondhand. So I think that has been something that's like been a relatively easy thing to action, but I think does make a difference for the environment.
That's a nice one. Yeah, I like this. Especially in London, there are so many nice charity shops and like vintage shops that it's even more fun to explore than the regular shops on the high street. So yeah, it's a nice one. Okay, I guess we can continue if no one else has anything to share. Okay, so in the next part, I wanted to offer some simple swaps that most people will think are hopefully implementable or things that they are even just interested in. And I think I would like for people to honestly jump in and mention anything else that you think about and are good swaps that are easy or like that are cheaper or anything really. But the first one that came to my mind was really vegan butter, also known as margarine, I guess. And there are a lot of brands out there that have really nice vegan butters. Some of them are just like on the cheaper side, some of them are really nice. Like there's everything that you could potentially want. And it might not seem like a lot, but replacing dairy butter with vegan butter can save up to 3 kilograms of CO2 emissions per kilogram of butter. And some people eat a lot of butter, so it could actually make a big difference. It also saves a lot of water and requires a lot of less agricultural land. Those plant-based breads are available in honestly pretty much every single shop in the UK. They're really not hard to find, and they might be in a separate section. And usually they are quite well labeled as vegan or like dairy-free, or there are lots of labels that you can find, but usually it will be quite easy to tell which ones are vegan. And a lot of the time tend to be much cheaper because essentially it's just oil, so it costs a lot less to produce. And from my side, I would say the taste difference is pretty minimal. And yeah, you wouldn't really notice it, especially if you use it in baking. I don't think most people would notice the difference at all. So that's an easy one to swap out. And you can use it the same way, obviously. If a recipe calls for like 100 grams of butter, you can use 100 grams of vegan butter, for example, which is nice. Sorry, that was all. I just had this last minute thought. Yeah. And then this plant-based milk, that's another one that is pretty easy. I honestly see so many people already ordering their coffee with like oat milk, I think is the most popular one, but also like soy milk and almond milk. There are so many different ones to choose from based on like personal taste and also like I guess allergies and things like that. Um, but replacing 1 liter of dairy milk with a plant-based milk alternatives can already save 1 to 2 kilogram of CO2 emission, 500 to 100 liters of water, 500 to 1,000 liters of water, sorry, 80 to 90% of the land required. And if we just look at it on a slightly bigger scale and assume a person has a liter of milk a week and there's about 52 weeks in the year, if for a year you replaced cow's milk with plant-based milk, you could save about, I can't really subtract it in my head right now, but about 39,000 litres, which is, I've put it in terms of swimming pools here because I thought that was a pretty nice image. But it would take 41,600 litres to produce the 52 litres of cow milk that a person would have maybe in a year. Depends obviously on each person, but as an average. So that would fill up 83% of a swimming pool in terms of water usage just to produce those 52 liters of cow's milk, which is so much to think about when you try and picture it in terms of swimming pool. Honestly, it blew my mind. Even 2,969, wow, I can't count, I can't say my numbers. 2,496 liters is still a lot when you think about it, but when you look at the difference, it is honestly so informative to see how much water you could be saving. And I can only speak for myself, but I think oat milk actually tastes really nice, especially with coffee. And soy milk is really nice with cereals. So it's a pretty easy, nice one to swap out. And sometimes it can just be fun to try different milks. There are so many now in the shops, so it can also just be a fun thing to try out for once. Yeah. We touched on this earlier, but beef burgers and beef in general is really high. It's a really big pollutant in terms of CO2 emission, but also land use and water use. So this is probably the swap that would make the biggest difference. And if you looked into comparing it to bean burger, I'm sure the difference would be even greater. But here I've chosen to compare it to a Beyond Burger, which is basically a vegan beef burger. The brand is in a lot of places. I think a lot of restaurants use it for their vegan burgers. You can also find it in the shops. And from my experience, it looks kind of scary to me. So I think it looks quite a lot like regular beef, though I assume the difference is still there. But I think it's just about getting used to a different taste and maybe accepting it's going to be a little bit different. I see we have a hand up here.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to ask in terms of
Yeah.
these swaps.
Yeah.
So obviously, you've gone through all the data and that's very convincing. I mean, I'm vegetarian myself, so I'm, partially bought into all this stuff. And obviously, the
Nice.
environmental benefits of these swaps are very clear. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit about nutrition earlier on, and I understand you're not a dietitian or a specialist in this field, but I think over the past couple of years, especially, there has been this increased level of awareness about obviously ultra processed foods and, that being a really big concern in terms of public health. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on kind of where to strike the balance between, trying to make these choices to sort of reduce our carbon footprint, but also making sure that we've got a nutritious, like balanced diet that's not full of a load of chemicals.
Yeah, that's a really nice question. Thanks for asking this. So yeah, I'll say it again. I'm really not a dietitian, but in my head, when I think about ultra processed, I think sometimes people can get a little bit worried when the ingredients list is too long. When often, if you made like a really big soup, I guess, and you used up a lot of vegetables and a lot of spices, you would also end up with a really long ingredient list, but maybe nothing to really be worried about. And I know some of these ingredients can be like chemicals and can be harmful potentially. We don't, I guess, this only so much the average citizen knows about those things. But I think in the UK in general, there are some really good food quality standards. So I personally am not worried about eating, really harmful chemicals. I think they do pretty thorough tests. And I also think that, for example, a vegan beef burger, the average person will maybe have this every other week, I would say. You go out, you have a burger, or you get a takeaway. I think it's also about striking a balance, and that's pretty true for every single possible diet, vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, or meat eating. It's about being able to have whole foods most of the time, and then sometimes maybe treat yourself, have something a little bit different. So if you, for example, wanted to have a protein source that felt less processed, I would personally turn to tofu or seitan or tempeh or any legumes. I also want to say, I think for the average woman, unless you're really into bodybuilding, the like required protein is about 50 grams a day, which is I find it actually pretty easy to hit. Even by just eating like a big bowl of pasta, the size is actually really high in protein. So I think it's all about personal preferences and being able to see what really matters most to you personally, whether you really want to be healthy and like really care about everything that you eat and want it all to be whole foods, or whether you care more about the taste and having maybe flavors that you wouldn't necessarily get with whole foods. So I think it's a personal choice that people have to make. I don't know if that was helpful. Nice. So I was wondering if anyone, seeing the few swaps that I offered here, if anyone saw one of them that really, I don't know, struck them or that they really thought like, oh, I would never want to do this or I would love to do this. Oh yeah, I can see we have Danielle. Sounds up.
Hi, yeah. I think a
Yeah.
fun one, maybe more
Yeah.
for summer, is instead of standard ice cream, could be like frozen mashed bananas. That's what I've
Ooh.
heard some people do, and it's, it
Yeah.
still has like the coldness of ice cream, but obviously it's vegan friendly. So
Yeah,
but definitely more for summer rather than right now in winter.
it's true. I mean, if you're an ice cream person, I think you can join me in saying that you can have ice cream in any weather. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. Also, I can imagine that would be a lot cheaper than
Hmm.
regular ice cream and very, very healthy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've seen a few people mixing like banana and like different like oat milk, for example, and like agave or a sweetener, and then freezing it and making sort of ice creams. I've never tried it myself. Have you tried it, Daniel, like freezing a banana?
I haven't, no. My brother,
Yeah.
he does freeze his like fruits for a smoothie and things, but I've never
Oh,
done it
yeah.
just bananas for
Nice.
ice cream. So that's one for the future.
Yeah, nice. Nice, fun one. Thank you.
I'm just conscious of time, so I think I'm going to move on to the next part of the presentation just so we can get through it all
Thank you.
before 3.
Mm. Okay. So now we're going to look a little bit about the misconceptions that a lot of people I think have when they think about a vegan diet. And these are, I guess, things that you see online a lot that people would tend to ask a lot. And the first one is that vegan food is quite expensive and that you really have to to follow the stereotype of very like sort of city living middle class, I don't know, person to eat vegan. And I think that can be true. A vegan diet can be really expensive if you want really high-end products. And a lot of them also tend to be vegan and organic at the same time. Quite often you don't really have the choice of non-organic. So that can raise the prices a little bit. But at the same time, having been like a student and been vegan and having been like maybe yeah, trying to make it as affordable as possible myself, I can definitely say that there are so many options now, especially focusing on whole foods. I've just put some comparisons on the screen. We have like a vegan butter at the top and then a regular butter at the bottom, and we can see that this vegan butter specifically is actually cheaper, much cheaper per kilogram. And then I've got a comparison here with a milk. I don't really know and soya milk. This is from a well-known supermarket, if you recognize the font. And you can see that the soy milk is actually much cheaper than the regular milk. So there are products that can be a little bit more expensive, and then there are products that are going to be less expensive, and it depends on each person's personal choices. And I think it really depends on, yeah, what people eat, but you can definitely make a vegan diet affordable. So I just wanted to address that. Okay, this one is also quite big. As I said earlier, you have to be a city living middle class person. It's just a trend, it's like hipster vibes, but actually, veganism has been around for such a long time. And for so many people, it's a really deeply rooted ethical choice that they make, and that is a pretty serious thing, and that they would take pretty seriously. And there are actually, so the word vegan was first coined in 1944. So it's been around for a while. It's just like, it's not a craze that was brought in by like millennials and Gen Z. It's been around for a really long time. And I know there's been vegetarian people since like before Jesus Christ. So it's actually, yeah, it's a really long held belief. And 8.6 million people in the UK follow a meat-free diet, whether that is vegetarian, vegan, or pescatarian. So it's not quite a quarter. I guess it's only 16% of the population, but it's still a massive chunk when you think about it. That's every fifth person that you meet is eats meat-free diet. So and we can see on this call there are so many vegetarians, vegans, and people who are trying to limit their meat consumption. So it is quite widely spread, and there are 2.5 million people who identify as vegan in the UK, which is about the size of Birmingham in terms of population. So it is quite a lot, and it's definitely um, a lifestyle that is growing and that is gaining an ampler, and that more and more people are trying to join or like taking steps to become, if not vegan, honestly, like pescatarian, vegetarian, and honestly, even the vegan society has grown so much over the last 20 years or so. It's really incredible to see this. Not that I was around, but it's been really cool to see the stats and how much it's grown. And that is one that I think people generally believe, which is that eating locally farmed meats and dairy is more environmentally friendly than a vegan diet, which relies heavily on exports. Because I think the stereotype is that we eat a lot of avocados, and I think the average person, the average vegan, probably eats not even an avocado a week. So I think it really, really depends. But yeah, I've heard the avocado one so much. This one is actually pretty easy to answer because only 6% of a food's environmental impact is due to transport. So if we think back about this CO2 difference, that we had a slide with the CO2 generated by a heavy meat diet and a vegan diet, and we remove 6% from that meat heavy diet, we're still nowhere near a vegan diet. And I think any diet can rely heavily on exports, and it's down to personal choices whether or not this is true. So I think in general, this is pretty easy to say it's not true based on this number, like 6%. Cool. Okay, so that is all I had to say about this. I would be really happy to have any questions or like any other discussion points that people want to bring up. Yeah, here for a chat, basically.
Just before we go into the Q&A, I'm just going to wrap up this session. So if anyone needs to go at 3, they can. Otherwise, people can stay on and ask any questions and talk about anything else that they're interested in raising today. So I just want to say Mareva has kindly added in some sources within this PowerPoint on certain slides that she referenced certain data. We've also got some further resources here, which you can see now, or when I send around the slides, they can be accessible. And just to finish up, I want to say thank you firstly to Mareva for delivering such an interesting presentation. I can say personally there were things that I didn't know before that now I've kind of learned about, and it has opened my mind up to some different things. So as I said at the start, this session has been recorded and it will be able to be watched on demand at the Lancaster West Neighbourhood Team YouTube channel. I will send the link round when I send the slides as well. If you have any other questions, or concerns from this talk, you can email me. I will also, in the follow-up email, include Mareva's email in case you had any questions to direct, especially to her. And then the final thing is, if you can, it would be great to scan the QR code, or I will provide a link later to our feedback form, just so we can hear about your experience of the session. And also there's a chance to provide suggestions for any other topics that you'd like to see covered in this sustainability series. So we have these sessions on a mostly monthly basis. So yeah, anything that you're interested in can be suggested there. So I will leave it open to the Q&A now. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending, and feel free to leave when you need to. Thank you. Also, I meant to say, if anyone has any questions as well or topics, then also you can raise them.
Alana?
Hi, sorry, I joined a bit late, but I just wanted to say thank you very much. That was really interesting. I am vegetarian for environmental reasons, but there was still quite a lot that I didn't know. So thank you. I did have